Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the High Court case of Aw Chee Peng. The case of Aw Chee Peng highlights the legal complexities arising from family disputes over co-owned property and the obligations to account for rental income. The dispute centers on two properties in Singapore co-owned by the plaintiff, Mr. Aw Chee Peng, and the defendant, Mr. Aw Chee Loo, and their father, Mr. Aw Gim Hua. These two properties, purchased in 1989 for 400,000, were primarily funded by the father, with the remaining amount covered by a joint overdraft facility held in the names of all three co-owners. Initially, the father managed the properties and their rental income. However, in 2003, he moved to China, leaving the defendant in charge of managing the two properties. For nearly 2 decades, the defendant managed the rental income and expenses, while the plaintiff alleged that he never received his one-third share of the rental income. In 2021, the plaintiff initiated legal proceedings, claiming that the defendant had failed to account for the rental income. First, it had to determine the nature and extent of the defendant's duty to account for rental income under Singapore law, including whether this duty arose solely from Section 73A of the Conveyancing and Law of Property Act, or if it included equitable obligations. Number two, the court had to examine whether the father's alleged arrangement with the defendant modified the statutory duty to account. Third, the court considered whether the plaintiff had accepted this arrangement, either expressly or by acquiescence. Acquiescence means to keep quiet or to tiam-tiam. Additionally, the court evaluated whether the arrangement had come to an end, and if so, when this occurred. Lastly, the court had to address whether the plaintiff's claim was time-barred under the Limitation Act or affected by the equitable doctrine of laches. The doctrine of laches simply means taking a long time to sue. The plaintiff argued that as a co-owner, he was entitled to 1/3 of the rental income, and that the defendant's failure to account for the rental income violated Section 73A of the CLPA. He also contended that the defendant owed him an equitable duty to account, asserting that his share of the rental income was held on constructive trust by the defendant. The defendant, on the other hand, acknowledged the general duty to account, but argued that the father had made an arrangement modifying this duty. According to the defendant, the father instructed him to use the rental income to cover property taxes, income taxes, and maintenance costs, with any remaining funds allowed to be retained by him and his family. The defendant asserted that this arrangement was accepted by the plaintiff, who did not challenge it for nearly 20 years. The defendant further argued that the plaintiff's delay in raising the claim and suing him should preclude any recovery based on time limitations or acquiescence. The court ruled that the defendant's duty to account arose solely from Section 73A of the CLPA, which imposes a statutory obligation on co-owners to account for rents or profits received from co-owned property. The court rejected the plaintiff's argument that an equitable duty to account existed, finding no basis for constructive trust in this context. It concluded that the statutory duty to account could be modified by agreement, and it accepted that there was an arrangement made by the father, which the plaintiff had acquiesced to. The court found evidence of the plaintiff's acceptance of this arrangement in his own conduct and communications, including text messages in which he acknowledged that rental income was being used for specific expenses. The court also determined that the arrangement was not permanent and could be terminated. It ruled that the arrangement effectively ended when the father lost mental capacity in January of 2021, after which the defendant was required to account directly to the plaintiff. On the issue of time bar, the court held that the plaintiff's claim for an account was limited to rental received from January 2021 onwards. Although the plaintiff sought an accounting for the entire period from 2003, the court concluded that his delay in pursuing the claim precluded recovery for the earlier periods. The court dismissed the defendant's arguments based on the doctrine of laches, as this doctrine does not apply to statutory claims under Section 73A of the CLPA. Ultimately, the court ordered the defendant to provide an account of rental income from January 2021 onwards, affirming the plaintiff's right to recover his share for this limited period. This case underscores the importance of documenting family arrangements related to co-owned property. While informal agreements can modify statutory obligations, they are often subject to interpretation and disputes over their scope and duration. It also highlights the need for prompt action when asserting legal rights, as delays can limit the extent of recovery. For owners of property, maintaining clear communication and keeping accurate records is crucial to avoiding disputes and ensuring compliance with legal obligations. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.